as well.
Yeah. All right. Good. Welcome, everyone. This is the 9th webinar in our NBA 2025 webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. I'm hoping more and more people will join as the time goes on, but we like to start these webinars quite precisely on time. Thank you all of you for joining today. My name is Carol Poole. I am a project manager at SANBI, and the NBA is one of the things I manage. So I'll just be giving the introduction today and then handing over to our main speaker, Pradil. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Next week is the final webinar of the series, so I hope you'll be joining us then as well. Next slide, please, Pradil. I'll just give a very brief reminder of what we measure in the NBA. I'm sure hopefully some of you have been watching the other webinars of the series, and we've given details of each of these. So if you did miss some of these, please go back and watch the other webinars, and Keita will post a link to the YouTube channel where most of the webinars are up to date. I'm not sure if last week's is there yet, but all the webinar recordings are there on the SANBI YouTube channel. So just as a reminder, the National Biodiversity Assessment assesses 3 levels of biodiversity. One is ecosystems. We have 980 odd ecosystems across all the realms, terrestrial realm, freshwater realm, which is rivers and wetlands, the marine realm, and we in South Africa distinguish the estuaries as a separate realm, an estuarine realm. We've got the cross realm coastal zone, and then of course South Africa's subantarctic territory as well, which consists of marine and terrestrial. And we are very proud to be able to say we are one of the first countries to assess all our ecosystems using the IUCN Red List of Ecosystems, the global standard. South Africa had its own standard for many years, and then the IUCN standard came in around 2016. So for this NBA and the previous NBA, we have gradually made sure that all the realms are now using the IUCN standard. Partners on this work is very important. SANBI doesn't have estuarine or coastal scientists. Yeah, I'll go back to the deal. So CSIR, Nelson Mandela University, very, very important. And then species-wise, in the middle part there, we've been using the IUCN Red List of Species for many years, as have many other countries. South Africa, again, one of the few countries to be able to track trends in species red lists over time. Again, partnerships are extremely important there. The Endangered Wildlife Trust, for example, does all the mammal red list assessments. BirdLife South Africa does the bird red list assessments, and there's many, many more partners. I can't really mention them all. And then very excitingly, I hope you all joined the very interesting webinar given by some of our genetic diversity colleagues. These are emerging global indicators linked to the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Very exciting work. Again, South Africa really groundbreaking in terms of the genetic indicators. Thanks, Pradil. Next slide. Right, so the form of NBA 2025, there is a summary book. You can download that. But the main product of NBA 2025 is a website that Pradil's just quickly showing on the screen there as well. And please go and delve into that website. The content is really deep. It's in depth. You can delve down into whatever level you want, whether it's just looking at the headline indicators or the key messages or whatever it is that you need to look at. Please go and have a look at the website. And we've got contact details on the website as well. There's an NBA email address. Comes to me, so you can always pop us an email as well. Next slide, please. And of course, all this kind of being world leaders takes a lot of effort. So we try our best to calculate who contributes to NBA, to each NBA cycle. This time there were over 490 contributors representing around 110 institutions. It's very hard to do this kind of calculation. We keep records at every single workshop. And who's reviewing, who's providing data, all of that kind of thing. We try and keep the best records we can. So this is just a selection of the people involved, the key partners involved. But yeah, many, many, many people involved, requiring a lot of effort. Next slide, please. So the purpose, well, today's webinar is all about what is the NBA used for. So we're not going to really get into the findings. You can watch other webinars that have already covered the findings of NBA 2025. We are going to talk to you today about what is the NBA then. Okay, so it was launched in December 2025. what is it then used for? And we've written up this document called the Contextual and Operational Framework of the NBA. This is found on the SAMBI website, webpage of the NBA, and Keita can pop that into the chat as well if anyone wants to download this document. This is kind of the how-to of the NBA. Now, we had never written this up before, so this was published last year. We keep updating the versions of this document, and it's really, how is the NBA done, or why is it done, what's its background, and what's its context. And we have come up with this one clear statement of South Africa's National Biodiversity Assessment is a collaborative effort to synthesize the best available science on South Africa's biodiversity to inform policy, support decision-making across multiple sectors, and contribute to national development priorities. As you can imagine, that one sentence took quite a lot of workshopping, and then we came up with 7 key things. The objectives of the NBA are to inform policy and decision-making across multiple sectors. In other words, it's not just the biodiversity sector, it's everyone's document. Everyone should be able to use the NBA. Number 2, support prioritization and planning for conservation action. Most of you probably know that the NBA datasets, and Pradil will go into this in more detail today, get used in a lot of spatial planning work and a lot of actual prioritization for the work that South Africa needs to do. Number 3, highlight the benefits of biodiversity for people and the economy. Now, those of you who've been around for a while know that SAMBI, with partners, led a process called Making the Case for Biodiversity in around 2015, 2016. And that work really helped us as the biodiversity sector place our arguments in the greater context of all the other challenges that South Africa has. So talking about the benefits that biodiversity provides for people, the economy, society is a really important part of the NBA. And we've got a marvelous webpage called The Importance of South Africa's Biodiversity. We've got a lovely biodiversity profile page that gives you the facts and the stats of South Africa's biodiversity. And then right next to that is something called The Importance of Biodiversity. It's right there in the contents table of the NBA website. So please go and have a look at that. I don't think Pradil's going to get into number 3 a lot today, so I'm just telling you a bit more about it. And it's highly valuable. Lots of fact sheets that can be downloaded there. Lots of work that SAMBI's done in this space over the last 10 years. Number 4, present indicators for both national and international reporting. Pradil is going to get into this a little bit in more detail. From the State of Environment report all the way through to global reporting processes under various international conventions to which South Africa is a party. Number 5, raise key issues for education and fundraising. So there's always, those of you who've attended the webinars, there's usually like, what are our knowledge gaps? Where can people get involved? We need a continual effort to collaborate and, create the space for ongoing improvement in the NBA. So number 5 and 6 are very much about using the NBA as an educational platform. Where do we raise funds to fill the gaps? How do we collaborate to build the capacity that we need within the biodiversity sector? And then the 7th one is about filling those gaps and making sure that we've got priorities. There's so many gaps in the NBA. There's so much work that can be done. And how do we prioritize those? And how do we work with our partners to make sure that we are prioritizing them for ongoing and future improvement of the NBA? Right, final slide, please. I think Pradil. So here's SAMBI has this value chain. Those of you who know SAMBI as an institution, we try and explain what it is we do in the sort of bottom part of the value chain. And we really work from the foundational work upwards into policy and advice and action. And the sort of what we influence top of the pyramid is really about that making the case for biodiversity. And so Pradil is going to explain a little bit more today about the action plan, the 4-way action plan. It used to be a 3-way action plan. We now talk about a 4-way action plan for the country. Protect, avoid, restore, reduce pressures. And Pradil is going to explain how the NBA is used in many of those things. Can I hand over to you, Pradil? Hope I haven't left anything important. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Carol. I'm going to keep my camera off just to save on bandwidth. And if I can just have an indication, Zamkita and Carol, if you can give me a thumbs up that my sound is clear.
It's great.
Thank you. Yeah, so like Carol said, our aim is to influence and contribute to informed decision making. So I'm going to dig a little bit into how we do this or how we aim to do this going forward as well. And just to give you a quick refresher on what has been presented in previous webinars around the headline indicators. So these are the main messages or the main ways in which we are communicating the findings of the NBA. So as we say, we want to work on pressures. So we do need to understand which pressures are having the biggest influence and where. Then using the IUCN red list of species work, we look at species trends and also look at the representation of species within our protected areas network. And similarly, we also do that for our ecosystems, looking at representation of our different ecosystem types within the network, and also looking at the status of those ecosystems. So looking at the ecosystem threat status, which ecosystems are the most threatened and where they are, and then also doing ecosystem trend analysis to see what the trajectory is for biodiversity health across species and ecosystems. So that's just a quick refresher on the headline indicators, and these are key informants into informing policy and decision making across multiple sectors. So using information from all of the different ecosystem realms as well as species, our aim is to make the information available to inform prioritization of areas. So these form part of protected areas, the development of critical biodiversity area maps, and then other priority areas that are more specific in terms of realms, such as looking at important wetlands, as well as identifying areas where we need to focus in terms of expansion of management action and or legislation. So one of our keystone examples in how we have contributed to improved management within a specific sector is the development of the mining and biodiversity guidelines, where we use the biodiversity priority areas that was developed using products from the National Biodiversity Assessment and translated that into a map showing categories of risks for mining. This coincided with the development of the Mining and Biodiversity Guidelines, which was co-authored by the Department of Environmental Affairs, Department of Mineral Resources, the Chamber of Mines, and the South African Mining and Biodiversity Forum with SANBI. So this is a key example of mainstreaming within a specific sector, and there's work underway towards the revitalization of this forum, as well as potentially looking at lessons learned from this that could inform a revision of this. And the NBA 2025 would therefore be a key informant to any revision that does come out. Similarly, South Africa or Zambia has contributed to the development of the Essential Life Support Action Areas. So this is another international tool where the aim is for priority actions to be guided to specific areas. So now, when we talk about priority actions, we're looking at the installation of infrastructure and or the guiding of finance towards actions that would contribute to those four actions, and these which is around increasing protection, avoiding loss, reducing pressures, restoring ecosystem condition, and there is a fifth one within this, looking at urban adaptation, how urban areas can be better equipped to deal with increasing vulnerabilities related to changing ecosystem condition. And these include the potential impact and also the current felt impacts related to climate change. So one of the key things that this process helped with is the mapping of stakeholders, and that also helps us to identify the mapping of additional partners that we can work with, not just within these processes, but also contributing to the NBA. Identifying the priority policies that we need to work towards. And obviously then mapping out areas where nature-based actions for positive nature outcomes can be guided towards. And this is just to show you the 10 prioritized commitments. And these relate to high-level issues that have come out to the National Development Plan 2030, looking at improvement in water security, the restoration of ecosystems and conservation of priority ecosystems that contribute to the economy as well as to jobs. And then working towards allowing South Africa to be better adapted to deal with some of the issues around climate change and mitigation of climate change impacts. The National Biodiversity Assessment also contributes to the development of secondary maps. And this doesn't just include the maps that are developed, but also the information that gets collated through the NBA process. Supports the development of key maps that inform spatial planning. These are the critical biodiversity areas and ecological support area maps. So this example shows the terrestrial and freshwater maps. So these are usually developed by the development is usually led by the provincial entities within the terrestrial realm or on land. And these feed into bioregional plans that then in turn feed into the industrial development plans, SDFs, environmental management frameworks, strategic environmental assessments, as well as a key contributor to decision making within the EIA framework. Similarly, in the marine environment, the marine and coastal CBA map forms the basis for the marine spatial planning biodiversity sector plan, which is being used in the development of marine spatial planning going forward. And this was a collaborative product with DFFE, Oceans and Coasts, as well as Nelson Mandela University, speaking again to the culture of partnership and collaboration that SANBI uses in the development of the NBA. So we continue that culture when we are developing these other maps that then feed into guiding development and also the placement of human activity. So a key government platform that uses these CBA maps is the screening tool, which is used for EIA assessment. And there are plans underway to incorporate marine and coastal information alongside the terrestrial information on the EIA screening tool. And the National Biodiversity Assessment results are being used to update the marine and coastal CBA work. So alongside guiding spatial planning, the expansion of our conservation estate is another aspect where the data from the NBA plays a key role. So the CBA maps, alongside the map of ecosystems, where we combine our headline indicators around threat status and protection level. So you'll see on the screen, this is a map showing ecosystems that are protected and underrepresented in the network of our conservation estate. This becomes a key informant into the National Protected Area Expansion Strategy. So you will see on the right side of the screen the different iterations of the NPAS. And the goal of the NPAS is to achieve a cost-effective protected area network that allows for ecological sustainability and also increased resilience to climate change, so that we can achieve a representative sample of ecosystems as well as species within our conservation estate. This helps to set targets for expansion, and so these maps then also are able to provide additional information for decision making to guide where we can achieve expansion that is not only spatially efficient but also allows for resources to be guided into the right places. So this is so we had one from 2018 and it is up for revision this year. The terms of reference has been developed and should be out soon for an appointment of a service provider. So Sandy will be working with the department to ensure that the results of the latest National Biodiversity Assessment form part of the informants that go into the revision of the NPAS to guide the next 10 years of protected area expansion. So an example of how we've been effective in with previous NBAs in guiding and achieving expansion in our protected area network is the story of the Pakisa NPAs, commonly known. When SANBI and its partners undertook the 2011 NBA assessment, it showed that offshore marine ecosystem types were the most underprotected ecosystem types across all of the realms. So you'll see in the red circle, the small dark green section on the graph that shows how few ecosystem types were represented from our marine offshore regions. And through a lot of mainstreaming effort that was inspired by these findings, the map there was an intensive effort to map and prioritize areas for protected area expansion in the marine realm, and this was fortuitous because when Operation Pakisa came online, we were ready. So this was an instance where preparation met opportunity and shows the value of the work that we do in anticipation of these opportunities. So we were able to, so South Africa was able to declare 20 new offshore MPAs within a very short time because of the long lead up of research, analysis, and therefore assessment that was able to support the rationale for where to place these new MPAs. So alongside the scientific work was an excellent communication strategy that involved materials about why MPAs are important to human livelihoods and well-being. And this included a flyer and a beautiful short film that you can still find on YouTube. It's called Mzansi. So the link is there, or QR code is there for you to see, but you can see at the bottom of the screen how we leapt from the 2018 protection level results to 2019, showing a huge increase in our conservation estate and going from 0.4% of our mainland marine territory or maritime domain under protection to 5.4%. So a huge success in terms of our contribution from the NBA to guiding expansion in the conservation estate. So again, just showing you the indicators, the high-level indicators that get developed that are used in terms of our national and international reporting mechanisms. So Carol mentioned this earlier on, that we do contribute to the development of the state of environment. Now this is led by government, so it's utilized by the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment to inform the State of Environment report. This has also gone, similarly to the SANBI NBA process, this has gone from a physical book to an online environment. And so now we also have an online version of the State of Environment report where you can go and look up information on the indicators that government uses to track whether management action and policy implementation are on track to achieve the intended purposes. And so the NBA is therefore a key informant into developing those indicators. So sometimes the indicators that we develop or that we calculate are used directly, and other times, as in this instance, they form part of an additional secondary indicator that is used to look at both management and policy alongside environmental condition and status. In the international arena, South Africa is a signatory to several multilateral environmental agreements, or MEAs. The NBA's national headline indicators are directly applicable for reporting on our progress towards meeting the goals and targets, specifically within the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework under the Convention on Biological Diversity. There's a very close relationship between what we do in the NBA and this framework. It's also extremely useful in reporting on the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals that is done in conjunction or in collaboration with the Department of the Statistics South Africa. Also working with government on reporting to the United Nations Convention to combat the desertification. So linked to our work on measuring the impacts of climate change and land degradation neutrality, as well as on the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands of International Importance. So besides the headline indicators, a lot of the information that is collated and developed through the NBA process also contributes to international databases, such as those hosted by the IUCN. So the ecosystem assessments and species assessments, red list assessments, are then collated and submitted to the IUCN for hosting on their websites, and we also contribute to the mapping of protected areas that is submitted to the World Database of Protected Areas hosted by Protected Planet. So contributing not just to reporting, but also to the dissemination of information. So Kara highlighted how the NBA gets used to provide messaging on the benefits of biodiversity for people and the economy. And this is really related to ecosystem services, as well as contributions to GDP and the economy and human well-being. And it's a bit of a litmus test for the state of biodiversity's contribution, because when we do the NBA, we look at ecosystem condition as part of the evaluation of ecosystem status, as well as ecosystem protection level. So well protected, usually there's a combination where we look at the status of an ecosystem, so which speaks to the condition, as well as in informing how well protected something is. So something can be in a protected area, but because it's being utilized, the condition of the ecosystem might be affected, and this will then directly affect the level of ecosystem services that flow. So the better an ecosystem condition, the greater the expectation for that ecosystem to provide ecosystem services. So this is just highlighting the jobs contribution that comes from biodiversity, and also recognizing that biodiversity has got big cultural connections within our society, and plays a key role in how South Africans perceive life, as well as how we enjoy life. So a lot of us have a direct relationship with biodiversity, and the better the condition of that biodiversity, the greater the impact it is on our enjoyment. One of the key issues is that we get to use the ecosystem protection level. As I said before, the links between ecosystem protection and ecosystem threat status and condition helps to guide us in terms of the sectors that we need to mainstream into. And so looking at ecosystem services that flow from biodiversity, water is a key one. And so our messaging, or rather, let me go back so that I can show that in this current ecosystem protection level results, we are seeing now that freshwater systems are now the least protected ecosystem types across the realm. So it's shifted from the marine, and now it's the rivers and wetlands. And so this is why I also brought up the big success that we had in 2019. So now the focus has moved, and so now we also need to move our focus to align with the results. And so water becomes a key aspect when we are talking about freshwater systems. So we know that South Africa is a water scarce country. And in the freshwater realm, we've done a lot of work to identify our strategic water source areas. So these are the areas where it's 10% of our land, but it delivers 50% of our water supply. So clearly, these are areas that have a high value in terms of the contribution to society, in terms of water provision, but they also are very key in terms of ensuring that there's enough water for other environments that require freshwater input. And freshwater is not just something that is needed on land. We also have coastal and marine ecosystems that are very dependent on freshwater input, because freshwater carries sediment and nutrients from inland to where they are needed in the marine environment. So these strategic water source areas are not just important for the economy and for those processes on land, but actually it's ubiquitous. It's across the board that we do need to look after our strategic water source areas. And the work on strategic water source areas has been supported by the development of freshwater maps, coincided as well as the freshwater areas of priority that then gave us the foundational information that allowed us to identify strategic water source areas. And the work on strategic water source areas has been taken forward, and this is just an example of the Eastern Cape Drakensberg. So you can see that in these environments, there's potential for multiple uses. So similarly to the marine environment, you can have multiple use in one area. So here we have an area that is showing rural people living within the rural areas. It's very underdeveloped in terms of hard infrastructure, but most of these areas are also key areas for rural economies. So there's a lot of agriculture that's happening there and a lot of animal husbandry. So we're seeing an intersection of water source areas with cattle grazing. And then also some of these areas are very high in minerals. So there's competition there in terms of mining opportunities. So the work on the strategic water source areas has allowed us to find inroads into other sectors. And so this has led to a great partnership with the Department of Water and Sanitation, previously known as Water Affairs, where we were able to influence the water resource strategy with the inclusion of strategic water source areas in there. And then also the National Water and Sanitation Master Plan, which also mentions strategic water source areas and ecological infrastructure. So it goes to show how a lot of the information that gets developed in the National Biodiversity Assessment process can be repackaged and fed into other departments. This also has led to the work on strategic water source areas. Has also led to the development of natural capital accounts. So we developed terrestrial accounts as well as accounts for strategic water source areas, and this has allowed us to build even further on our relationship with other departments, specifically the Department of Statistics. So besides the work that we do on mainstreaming into specific sectors and also contributing to policy, we are also contributing to the improvement of best practice and as well as global standards. So the NBA team has been very involved over the years in supporting the review and updates to the IUCN assessment methodology. So this is for species as well as for ecosystems, and also has done a lot of work in collaborating with the IUCN team responsible for the global ecosystem typology. So we've been using the NBA and other associated biodiversity mapping and prioritization methodologies to improve standards and practice around the world. And the methodologies that have been used in the NBAs now form the basis for an online course that is helping to build capacity around the world. And you'll see on the screen the booklet or the book that was produced, Mapping Biodiversity Priorities, that is now available in English and French. And there's a training course that is also associated with the Mapping and Biodiversity Priorities book. So please go and have a look at those, showing how the NBA is not just a tool for reporting, but also a way in which we are contributing and developing our own methodologies. So as Carol mentioned earlier on, we are also very much, hoping to hoping to continue to lead in the international arena. And so the inclusion of genetics within the assessment is also a world first. The team has done a lot of great work on expanding the taxonomic coverage of species, for genetic analysis. Working with the Red List team, the IUCN Red List team to increase data mobilization, and then also being able to improve biological realism. So that is how realistic the assessment is for species that especially over long range areas, looking at bottlenecks, looking at genetic diversity. So we've done a lot of work towards this. And so South Africa is one of the first few countries that are able to report on genetics as part of the National Biodiversity Assessment, and contributing once again to informing methodologies and best practice at the international level. So as I mentioned before, not only are we trying to contribute to the development of the indicators and development of maps, but also one of the key things that we want to do is allow for access to information. So besides the NBA website and the BJIS website that we host within the SANBI IT infrastructure, the National Biodiversity Assessment also contributes to external data portals. So these include the Ramsar sites, the key biodiversity areas network, and then the government supported platforms looking at the screening tool and the National Oceans and Coast Information Management System, alongside other platforms where information is provided for decision making. So how you can get involved, that these were just, these are clearly just a subset of some of the ways in which the National Biodiversity Assessment can and has been used. And so we look forward to revising or updating some of the information based on the results of the latest NBA. But we would love to hear your experiences, because we know the NBA is not made just for SANBI. It is a South African product, and we've seen a lot of people over the years using the NBA in their own processes. So it would be great to hear your experiences of how you have mainstreamed the NBA, or sharing ideas on ways in which we can take mainstreaming the NBA forward that we haven't thought of, or into sectors that might not have been covered before. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm going to hand back now to our chair. Thanks, Carol.
Thanks, Pradil. And I just want to say again, the NBA is an enormous amount of work. So please go and delve deeper. And as Pradil says, you know, the NBA is for everyone. I mean, the deputy minister in her launch speech said, now it's up to all of us to make use of the NBA. And so I'd really like to encourage you to make use of that NBA email address. I've popped in the chat a link to a paper that we published last year. So it was the first time we kind of did some kind of scientific review of the use of the 3 previous NBAs. This came out before NBA 2025. So you might want to have a look at that paper. And I'd like certainly to encourage our research-related partners is to continue this measuring of use of the NBA, measuring its uptake, measuring how it's used, making quantitative analysis and even qualitative analysis of how it's used, why it's used, who uses it is really important. And we'd love to partner with people, especially our research partners who are interested in that kind of uptake and mainstreaming lessons and how we can improve into the future. Then we've got a few minutes for questions, so please don't hesitate to pop your hand up. There was a question in the chat about the Mining and Biodiversity Guideline map, so the link to the guideline was posted in the chat if you want to download it there. I don't know, obviously the data sets of that Mining and Biodiversity Guideline, yes, are very out of date now, which is one of the key priorities of why we said that we'd like to have new spatial data sets for use in the mining sector. And Natalie's quite right that obviously the most current work, the current stuff is available or will be shortly in the screening tool. So SANBI's preparing all the NBA 25 data sets to go into the environmental screening tool. So that is the most current place. I'm not sure if all mining authorizations go through the screening tool as well. It's not my field of expertise, but we absolutely have identified the mining sector as a place to revitalize, as Pradil said, and hopefully looking towards updated spatial data sets that everyone can use, and an updated forum and a guideline. Somebody mentioned the NBSAP. So I don't know if anyone else wants to comment here on the NBSAP, but yes, absolutely. We try and time each NBA release to be right before when necessary things are. So this time it was right before the 7th National Report was due to the CBD. And of course, the NBSAP was under development at the same time. Now, in my understanding, the NBSAP is about to go out for public comment. I don't know if Pradil or anyone else in SANBI wants to just make a comment on the NBSAP in light of the question that was posed in the chat.
I can give a comment. So
Sure.
yes, so a lot of the leads that were involved in the NBA were also involved in the first initial steps around collating information on revising or putting forward actions and activities that speak to the outcomes of the NBA. And so we can't really, I can't really provide inputs on, how can I say, slides on that, because I think everyone has there's been a lot, there's a lot that's in there. It would have taken the whole 40 minutes to talk about how and where the NBA has been put in there. And also we had the NBA Consultative Conference not too long ago. So I thought it's been a lot of stakeholder engagement and getting inputs, and I felt like people might be tired. I know I am tired of talking about the
NBSAP. Yeah, thanks, Pradil. That's great. And my understanding is the NBSAP goes out for public comment sometime soon. I don't know if anyone's from the department is here, could just say. Do you know, Pradil, when it goes out for public comment?
So the final date for the NBSAP publication for public comment hasn't been communicated yet, but there is a website, because I'm still presenting at the moment. I can't share, but
Okay,
if you go onto the department's website, they do have a website that is dedicated to the event around the International Day of Biological Diversity. And there you can find the latest version of the draft NBSAP, as well as the the complementary documents around the policy and institutional review, the financial needs assessment, which speaks to how much we would need to implement the NBSAP, which is still a draft, as well as the biodiversity finance plan, which speaks to the mobilization of resources again to implement the NBSAP. But because the NBSAP is not final yet, those two documents are also still drafts. So they will only be complete once the NBSAP is complete, but there should be information on the website on where you can provide inputs if you have anything that you want to add.
Perfect. I see, Alice, thanks very much for posting a link. Pradil, if you've got any other links, you can also just post that in the chat. So yes, these processes, they all unfold. It can be quite challenging sometimes, especially if, we're trying, and that's part of the reason. And if you come to next week's webinar, we're going to tell you a little bit more about the online NBA and why we've gone online and what it makes a difference for in terms of these kinds of things, so that how we can get information out there quicker and we don't have to wait in these long time frames for the latest NBA. So please join next week's webinar for that. MB, I'm not sure who you are. Do you want to just voice some of what you're putting in the chat? You're mentioning just, is there any clear-eyed analysis, however, policies like the Mining and Biodiversity Guideline, whether it's actually working? So this is the thing that I would like to promote, is more like qualitative and quantitative actual data on the uptake and mainstreaming of the NBA work. It's extremely difficult. Lisa von Staden did a PhD on part of this and the value of the CBA maps. And so there's PhD, there's that paper I published earlier, popped into the chat earlier. We do definitely need more research on the uptake and mainstreaming of the NBA. So I'd like to encourage all our partners, we need specific examples, and it's really proving valuable in the international community, by the way. So everyone looks at South Africa as this global leader, which we know we are. And then how does it get used, and how do we have the evidence of that use, and telling the stories of the use and the actual meaningfulness of doing all this foundational work, the foundational species and ecosystem work, the red list assessments, and then what is that used for, and really telling those stories. And I think, that's the kind of thing we really need to make use of now. So any of you who are able to tell those stories of the value of an analysis that comes out of the NBA, a data set that came out of the NBA, and I remember colleagues saying eventually, the pinnacle of the NBA use was that it's not actually mentioned in the National Spatial Development Framework of the country. It was published in, I think 2023. But every terminology that we use, like threatened ecosystems or ecological infrastructure, that terminology is in our National Spatial Development Framework, which is an amazing achievement. I don't think there's many countries in the world that have a national development framework that mentions so many biodiversity related issues, So I'm going to leave it there. I don't know if there was anything else that I've missed in the chat. Mainstreaming is this enormous topic. Uptake and mainstreaming of the NBA is this enormous topic. I'd like to encourage all of you to share with us what it is you're doing with the NBA via the NBA email address. I hope I haven't missed anything. Is there anything last from your side, Pradil? Thank you very much for giving us this general overview talk today.
No, thanks, Carol.
All right.
Nothing from my side.
We're going to close off, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. And please do join us next week for the last webinar of this series. Thank you. Bye-bye.